It's Monday, the 21st of July. Welcome to the President's Daily Brief. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. And yes, I'm back on the road, in case you were wondering. All right, let's get briefed. First up, Iran may still be reeling from its 12-day war with Israel, but it's wasting no time preparing for the next round. A wave of weapons shipments suggests the Iranian regime and its Revolutionary Guard Corps is rearming its proxies across the Middle East, signaling that not only have they not learned anything from that beatdown, but they don't intend to give up the fight. Later in the show, a pair of attacks on Palestinian Christians has turned into a public relations nightmare for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, prompting condemnation from the U.S. and even a visit to the West Bank by U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Plus, another wave of Ukrainian drones hits Moscow, just as President Zelenskyy suggests it might be time to restart ceasefire talks. What? Restart ceasefire talks? I guess I didn't know that any meaningful talks had actually started. All right, and in today's Back of the Brief, I'll bring you the strange story of an American dad who moved his family to Russia in search of, quote, traditional values. I'm not making this up. Now, he's been sent to the front lines in Ukraine after being tricked by the Putin regime that he once shilled for. But first, today's PDB Spotlight. Iran is still recovering from the beating received from Israel during the 12-day war. But, according to a number of new reports, the regime has already begun rebuilding its offensive capabilities, including arming its proxies for what could become another round of conflict with both Israel and the U.S. Despite losing top military officials and nuclear scientists, suffering targeted airstrikes against weapon stockpiles and missile launchers, and watching its nuclear infrastructure take a direct hit, Tehran is signaling that it's not backing down. Quite the opposite. New intelligence and a wave of weapon seizures show Iran is actively rearming its network of militias across the region. Let's start in Iraq. Just this past week, the head of Iran's Quds Force, which is basically the terrorist nerve center of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, met with Tehran's militia proxies in Baghdad. Now, he warned them to prepare for a possible Israeli strike and reportedly cautioned them to be on high alert for Israeli intelligence activity. While these Iraqi militias largely sat out the recent war between Iran and Israel, Tehran clearly views them as too valuable to risk in open battle. And you ask yourself why? Well, it's a good question to ask. It's because Iraq remains a crucial economic lifeline for the Islamic Republic, particularly when it comes to illicit oil profits. Iran is said to earn roughly $1 billion a year through its control of oil networks in Iraq, made possible by its affiliated militias embedded in the country's governing coalition. Instead of launching attacks during the 12-day war, these groups, they limited their actions to mostly rhetoric. That restraint, however, appears to be over. Since the war, multiple drone and missile strikes have hit U.S. military bases in both Iraq and Syria. And as we reported just days ago, drone attacks reportedly struck energy infrastructure in Iraqi Kurdistan, including oil fields operated by American companies. Meanwhile, in Yemen, Iran continues to supply its main proxy there, of course, the Houthis. Now, according to U.S. Central Command, forces loyal to Yemen's internationally recognized government intercepted a massive Iranian weapons shipment, 750 tons of cruise missiles, anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles, drone engines, and other gear, all intended for the Houthis. The haul, hidden under crates of air conditioners, was the largest ever seized by the Yemeni National Resistance Force. It came just days after the ceasefire with Israel went into effect, and military experts say the timing strongly suggests that Iran is working quickly to replenish Houthi stockpiles. And those weapons are already being put to use. Houthi fighters recently sank 2 commercial ships in the Red Sea, killing at least 3 crew members and taking others hostage. Another attack days earlier targeted a bulk carrier with a swarm of drones, missiles, and unmanned boats. The strikes marked a dangerous escalation in Houthi tactics after months of relative calm in the region. Over in Lebanon, Hezbollah, long considered Iran's crown jewel in its regional proxy network, is still in recovery mode. After sustaining heavy losses during their conflict with Israel, Hezbollah has been trying to restock its arsenal. Several shipments of Iranian weapons, ranging from drones to Kornet anti-tank missiles, have been intercepted by Syrian and Lebanese forces in recent weeks. But despite the pressure, Iran continues trying to push arms through, likely hoping that Hezbollah can regroup for a future showdown. And while Syria was once a key part of Iran's smuggling corridor, well, that appears to be changing. The Assad regime is gone, of course, replaced by a new Syrian government openly hostile to Iran. Authorities there say that they've seized weapons hidden in vegetable trucks and other cargo, and they're now closely monitoring attempts to transfer cash and equipment to Hezbollah through Iraqi networks. Back in Tehran, regime leaders aren't exactly hiding their intentions. On July 17th, Iran's top military commanders declared they were, quote, ready to strike the enemy again, referring directly to Israel and the U.S. One official told state media that U.S. efforts to resume talks were nothing more than, quote, preparation for war. Hey, Mike Baker here. I want to take just a few moments to talk about your online security because that is critically important. Look, right now, you probably noticed the headlines are full of data breaches and regulatory rollbacks, and all those things can make us more vulnerable. But here's the thing. You can do something about it. Now, let me tell you about a great business called Delete Me. Delete Me is here to make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online. Delete Me constantly monitors and removes your personal info from data broker sites, sending regular reports to you so you know exactly what's been found and what's been deleted. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. And now, our PDB listeners can get a discount. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/brief and use promo code BRIEF at checkout. That's BRIEF. The only way to get that 20% again is to go to joindeleteme.com/brief and enter the code BRIEF at checkout. One more time, that's joindeleteme.com/brief, code BRIEF. Welcome back to the PDB. An Israeli strike on Gaza's only Catholic church prompted a rare expression of regret from Jerusalem, delivered only after an unusually direct rebuke from the Trump administration in a level of backlash not seen in other deadly incidents in the war. The blast at Holy Family Church last week, which killed 3 civilians and wounded 10 others, marked a break in the pattern, not because of the death toll, but because of where it landed. The church had been serving as a refuge for hundreds of Palestinian civilians, including members of Gaza's dwindling Christian minority, when a tank shell struck its roof, blackening the stone facade and blowing out its stained glass windows. Within hours, Israel issued a public apology, calling the strike the result of, quote, stray ammunition, and expressing sorrow for the civilian casualties. But that statement of regret came only after a tense phone call between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, a call reportedly demanded by the president himself. According to Axios, Trump was visibly angry when briefed on the strike. He immediately demanded an explanation and insisted that Netanyahu issue a formal apology. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt later described the president's reaction as, quote, not a positive one. The Israeli statement also included a nod to Pope Leo, thanking him for his words of comfort. The pontiff condemned what he called the, quote, barbarity of the war and demanded an end to, quote, indiscriminate force and collective punishment. A day later, Netanyahu spoke directly with the Pope to offer condolences. Vatican officials, however, remain unconvinced. One cardinal flatly rejected Israel's version of events, saying a tank had, quote, fired directly on the church. So, what sets this incident apart from other strikes on civilian infrastructure? It was the speed and tone of Washington's response. It wasn't the death toll that triggered the apology. It was a symbolism of the sole Catholic church in the enclave hit with civilians inside. And that, more than anything, underscores Israel's growing PR problem. Consider the contrast. Just last week, as we covered here on the PDB, an Israeli drone strike on a water distribution site in a refugee camp in the Strip killed 10 civilians, including children. The blast left 17 more injured and scattered bodies across the site. Now, the IDF later admitted to a, quote, technical error, saying the intended target was an Islamic terror cell, but the munition fell short. That incident, despite its high civilian toll, drew no formal statement from Jerusalem or Washington. While Israel continues to insist its operations are aimed at Hamas terrorists who, as evidence has consistently shown, embed themselves among civilians, the collateral toll is mounting. Still, the Trump administration isn't backing off its support for Israel's campaign in the enclave. If anything, officials appear to be drawing lines only around incidents that make headlines for all the wrong reasons. Case in point, over the weekend, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee toured the ruins of the Church of St. George in the West Bank town of Taiba, It's a Christian village where Israeli extremists are suspected of setting the church ablaze. Huckabee, long a staunch defender of Israel, didn't hold back. In a post on X, he wrote, quote, "Desecrating a church, a mosque, or a synagogue is a crime against humanity and God." It was one of the sharpest rebukes yet from a Jerusalem ally who rarely breaks ranks. Huckabee, frustrated by what he sees as growing religious harassment of Christians, has warned he may soon declare that Israel no longer welcomes Christian groups, citing months of unexplained visa delays for evangelical missions. Officials in Jerusalem have yet to comment on the Taiba arson. Meanwhile, there are signs that ceasefire negotiations are inching forward, with mediators hoping to finalize the framework in the coming days. But the fallout from the strike of Gaza's Christian minority has become a political and public relations headache for Israel, one made all the more acute by the unusually public discomfort of its closest ally. Okay, turning to the war in Ukraine, both Moscow and Kyiv ramped up their long-range drone campaigns over the weekend, just as Ukrainian officials floated the idea of reviving ceasefire talks this week. According to Russia's defense ministry, 132 Ukrainian drones were shot down over Russian territory overnight and into Sunday afternoon, with strikes reported across at least 9 regions, including Crimea and parts of the Black Sea. Among the targets was Moscow itself, where dozens of drones were down in the skies over the capital region. One Ukrainian drone managed to crash just 20 miles northwest of central Moscow, setting cars ablaze in a residential neighborhood. Now, city officials say no serious injuries occurred. The drone swarm effectively shut down Moscow's airspace, as have similar drone barrages from Kyiv, prompting all 4 of the capital's international airports to suspend operations. Russia's Federal Aviation Agency reported that at least 130 flights were rerouted to alternate airports while emergency crews worked to contain the chaos. Kyiv wasted no time taking credit for the disruption. The head of Ukraine's Counter-Disinformation Center posted on Telegram that, quote, "The most effective story is the paralysis of Russia's air traffic, but the strikes were hardly one-sided." Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 57 Iranian-made Shad drones into Ukrainian territory overnight. Of those, 25 were intercepted or electronically suppressed, while the rest struck 10 separate locations. Still, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy spent the weekend suggesting the time may be right for a return to the negotiating table. In a post to Telegram, he called for a new round of ceasefire talks, citing progress on recent prisoner exchanges between the two capitals stemming from an agreement that was hammered out in May of this year during direct meetings in Istanbul. He wrote, quote, "Prisoner exchanges, return of children, end to the killings, and a meeting at the level of leaders is needed to truly ensure peace, a really lasting one," end quote. He added that Kyiv is ready for such talks. Zelenskyy's newly reassigned national security chief, who recently shifted from defense minister, proposed another round of negotiations for later this week. According to the Ukrainian president, quote, "The pace of negotiations must be increased. Everything must be done to achieve a ceasefire, and the Russian side stop hiding from decisions," end quote. But Kyiv isn't waiting on a handshake. Zelenskyy said on X that he had received a briefing from his top commander on Ukraine's deep strike campaign, targeting Russian logistics hubs far beyond the front lines. Zelenskyy wrote, quote, "Russian logistics must suffer significantly in response to Russia prolonging this war," end quote. As we've discussed here on the PDB, President Trump continues to press both sides to end the war. But just last month, the Kremlin launched more than 5,400 drones. That's the highest monthly total since its 2022 invasion. And July? Well, July has already seen a sharp rise in long-range aerial assaults. All right, coming up next in the back of the brief, an American family of influencers, whatever that means, moves to Russia in search of a better life, only for the father to be tricked into joining the war in Ukraine. Yeah, they're certainly the individuals that you want influencing the behavior of other people. Influencers. All right, stay with us. Hey, Mike Baker here. Now, here's an important fact that might have slipped past you. Did you know that July is National Grilling Month? It's true, and we are in July. Now, Tri-Tails Beef, well, they're helping you celebrate National Grilling Month the American way, over a fire with real beef raised by real ranchers. Now, Tri-Tails is a terrific business. It's a 5th-generation family ranch run out of Texas, delivering pasture-raised, grain-finished beef with zero shortcuts, no middlemen, It couldn't be easier. It's just great tasting beef delivered straight from their ranch in Texas to your front door. And right now you can get $10 off their 20-pound ground beef bundle plus 2 free flat iron steaks. Just head to trybeef.com/PDB. Stock up and fill your freezer in celebration of National Grilling Month. Go to trybeef.com/PDB today. In today's Back of the Brief, a Texas father who moved his family to Russia in search of what he called, quote, traditional values, is now being shipped off to fight in Ukraine, despite assurances that he'd never see the front line. Derek Huffman, a social media vlogger, he's a vlogger, and a welder. Those things go hand in hand. What do you do? Well, sometimes I vlog, sometimes I weld. With no military background, uprooted his wife and 3 kids to join the so-called American Village Project. Now, that's a nationalist homesteading scheme in Russia, spearheaded by pro-Putin expat toady, gormless turncoat, and Kremlin TV personality Tim Kirby. Yeah, he's a peach. Huffman was sold on propaganda that enlisting in the Russian army would fast-track citizenship and give his family a fresh start in a country he believes still upholds Western values. What? Obviously, that fantasy didn't last long, even for Huffman. After a few weeks of rushed training conducted entirely in Russian, and mind you, Huffman doesn't speak Russian, he's now reportedly headed to the front. His wife, still in Russia with their children, has taken to social media to plead for help. In a video posted last week, she said, quote, Derek, when he signed up, was told he would not be training for 2 weeks and going straight to the front lines. It's not going to happen at all. Don't worry about that. But it seems as though, she said, they're going to put him on the front lines. The family's move to Russia was equal parts cultural war crusade and online campaign. They financed the relocation through crowdfunding, and documented their journey on YouTube, where their content was picked up by Russian propaganda channels aimed at luring disillusioned Westerners. Again, I am not making this up. In one such video, filmed just last month, he declared, quote, if I go put my body on the line for Russia, I've learned our place here. Nobody can tell me different, that we don't belong here, end quote. Well, don't worry, Tiger. I don't think anybody's going to be clamoring for you to return to the U.S. Initially, Huffman was under the impression he'd serve as a war correspondent. Well, that sounds glamorous. That turned into talk of a repair battalion role, which sounds a little less glamorous, given his welding experience. Neither of those fine opportunities materialized. Instead, Huffman was slotted into a unit reportedly composed entirely of non-Russian speakers. They're receiving accelerated combat training with little oversight, and according to his wife, were required to purchase their own equipment, eating away at their modest Kremlin paycheck. Now, Huffman, unfortunately, isn't the first American to find himself swallowed by Russia's propaganda machine. In April of 2024, 21-year-old Michael Gloss, the son of a CIA executive, was killed fighting for Moscow. Like Huffman, he had reportedly been misled about the nature of his deployment. And that, my friends, is the President's Daily Brief for Monday, the 21st of July. Now, to listen to the show ad-free, and you can do that, it's very simple, just become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. I told you it was simple. And I do hope you had the chance to check out our weekend show over this past weekend. That's the PDB Situation Report. It's available on our YouTube channel. I hope you check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. You can find that at President's Daily Brief. And then, of course, you can also find our material anywhere you get your podcast stuff. I'm Mike Baker. I'll be back later today with the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let's talk personal finances. And let me ask you an intriguing question. What if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments, right? I told you, intriguing, right? Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. Well, it's possible when you call American Financing today. Look, if you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, grocery bills, auto payments, other bills piling up, look, you're not alone. The truth is, many Americans are putting those expenses on their credit cards, and for many, well, there doesn't seem to be a way out. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. If you're feeling stressed and stretched, call American Financing today to learn how they could help. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees, and that's important. And their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but that's something like a $10,000 raise. It's fast, it's simple, and it could save your budget. Call now. No obligation, just useful information that can help put you on the right track. The number, 866-885-1881. Again, that's 866-885-1881. Or just visit AmericanFinancing.net/PDB.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.